Hello. I'm going to just wait a couple of minutes to make sure that everybody who was logging in to join us will be showing up for our webinar today. Welcome. I'm Beth from the Milwaukee Public Library, and you can see the names of our panelists here in front of you. One thing you might want to look at before we do get started, I'm really sad to tell everyone the group chat is not working today. So unfortunately, you can't talk to each other using the group chat. You can talk to all of us, just not each other. So if you do want to talk as an audience, we're going to suggest that you go onto Twitter and use the hashtag, which I'm going to put into the chat box. It's just hashtag MPL romance. So sorry about that, everybody. I was kind of disappointed myself. I know that's always the best part. All right. Okay, well, it's 5:01, so I'm going to get started. Hello, I'm Beth. I work here at the Milwaukee Public Library, usually not here in my bedroom, but at the East Branch, which is on Lake Michigan. I think a lot of you are not from Milwaukee or Wisconsin, so welcome. I hope you can come visit us in person someday when it's not a scary time. Thank you for joining us, and please make sure to check out our website, mpl.org, for more information about other events that we have coming up in the future. Okay, so in the handouts section, which you can see in your little box on your program, you're going to find a handout from Milwaukee Public Library Director Paula Kiley. It's her statement on race and social equity. I hope you can take some time to give it a read and let us know what you think. There's also suggested reading for both adults, caregivers, teens, and children. Also in that section is a PDF of romance novels that were handpicked by our panel today, including myself and Jess, and you can download that for your future reading purposes. So I hope you enjoy those. Some of them are out already, some are coming soon. So if you're looking for them at your local library or with our library and you don't see them, make sure to request them for purchase from the library. Okay, and before I introduce our guests, just a couple housekeeping things. If you have technical issues, you can enter them into the question box. Jess will be taking care of any problems that you might have, so she'll help you out with that. One thing that does also work is if you're having an issue, just leave the room and come on back in. Okay, if you have questions or feedback, please use the Q&A box to send those. We will give questions to the panelists near the end of the program, the last 15 minutes or so. Please make sure to include your name and your pronouns if you would like to be identified. All right, so again, the chat function is only working to send messages to staff and the panelists, so head to Twitter at hashtag MPL romance to chat with all the other attendees today. There is a giveaway link in the chat box, care of Penguin Random House. You can enter that through midnight tonight to see if you can win a digital copy of Denise Williams' book, How to Fail at Flirting, along with a signed bookmark. I believe it's a digital advanced reading copy for that. Okay, so now let's introduce our panelists today. I'm online friends with most of them, so thank you for being here today. I've spent a lot of time talking to them online or buddy watching TV shows and talking about all things romance. And I thought it would be a great group to bring to you today to talk about Romance Awareness Month and why we love this genre so much. Let's start with Olivia Dade. Olivia Dade is a lifelong nerd and lover of romance. She earned her MA in American History. She worked at lots of jobs that didn't require, or that required pants, but not anymore. Now she can hang out at her house. And she also was a librarian at one time, which was really exciting for me to see. She now lives in Stockholm with her patient Swedish husband and her whip-smart daughter. Thanks for being here, Olivia. All right, Denise Williams wrote her first romance novel when she was just 8 years old. After penning these early works, she finished and eventually earned her PhD in education. She lived around the world and across the country as an Air Force brat. She now lives in Iowa. She was a 2019 Golden Heart finalist through the Romance Writers of America, and How to Fail at Flirting is her debut novel. You'll find that on bookshelves in December. All right, Steve Ammidown. Steve was the 2019 RWA Cathie Linz Librarian of the Year. Since 2016, he's been working as the Manuscripts and Outreach Archivist for Browne Popular Culture Library at Bowling Green State University. the nation's premier academic research collection devoted to American pop culture. He frequently shares items of the library's romance collection online. And then Allie Parker. Hi, Allie. Allie is a writer and romance cheerleader who loves to delve into how it translates onto screen and talks about it all the time online. I love her threads. Welcome, everybody. So here we are. Jess, I think, is going to jump behind if she wants to. She's my colleague here in the Milwaukee Public Library. Hi, Jess. Okay. So I'm going to open up just a general question to everyone, so feel free to jump in. Let's start with what brought you to romance? Why read it?
I guess I'll go first. You know, I love a happy ending. Watching people go through all kinds of situations and finding each other and finding happiness in the end, like how could I not live and read that every day?
I agree. Oh, go ahead, Denise.
I agree. It's for the happily ever after. But since Allie already said that, I'll say I like the kissing. I think that's a fun thing to read about, and kissing plus. But that idea of physical connection at the same time as you're reading emotional connection is so lovely and delightful and human that I think that's just one of the best things to read to sort of amplify the emotion of the book.
Why don't you go ahead, Olivia? I'll call on people.
I don't remember the first romances I read because literally I was digging them out of my mother's closet from the verboten stack I was not supposed to touch from the time I really started reading. But I would say over the years, to be serious, on top of what Allie and Denise said, is that it's become clear to me that romances, I think, are important for the happily ever after, but for me specifically in part because I have anxiety, that I need to know starting with the book going in, that no matter what happens in the middle, that there is going to be hope and happiness and a way forward at the end. And I think that's a message that particularly right now, but always, that people need to read, and that is very it's good for my heart, and hopefully good for a lot of other people's hearts too.
Yep, I absolutely agree with you. Go ahead, Steve.
No, and so I grew up as a kid reading everything I could possibly get my hands on, and occasionally that included like grabbing from my grandmother's brown bag of Silhouette Desires, even though I had no idea what I was reading. You know, so I grew up as a genre reader, reading science fiction and mystery and all these other things. And it wasn't really until I got to Bowling Green that I was handed this collection, and I was like, well, I need to read some of this. Like, I need to understand this. So I went to my wife, who's been an avid romance reader for years, was like, what should I read? She pointed me at Courtney Milan's Brothers Sinister series, and I was off. Like, I was just like, this is amazing storytelling. Like, I love the happy ending. Again, like, as someone with anxiety, like, it is really nice to have that guarantee. And yeah, and so like, it's part work, but also just part joy and just enjoying it.
Yeah, that leads really well into a question I had for you, Steve, which was, here you go. So one of your big roles is an archivist, and if somebody asks you why archive this material, what's kind of your canned response to that? Because I'm sure you get that a lot.
I do get that a lot. So, you know, our collection stretches back, our romance collection stretches back to the beginning of the library. You know, we were always getting sort of books handed to us through donations, either in small or large amounts. But it was in 1995 that Cathie Linz, who was a romance writer and was RWA's first library liaison, reached out to our library and said, hey, you guys should create an archive of romance. And it sort of snowballed from there. You know, now we have something like 16,000 category titles, 8,000 or 9,000 single title books. We have papers from over 140 romance authors, everyone from Patricia McClinn to Susan Elizabeth Phillips to Megan Hart. So it's a real hodgepodge collection, and to me, what it connects is sort of the through line of what romance means in a larger society. And, you know, we've started to see the academic study of romance grow over the last few years. And I think part of it is just having this historical record that's not just manuscripts, but it's also it's books, it's, you know, magazines, periodicals, all of that stuff that people can draw on to really help understand sort of the evolution of women's lives, especially from 1980 on through today, but even going back into the 70s and 60s and 50s. So I think it's really important, and I'm glad to see people taking it seriously. It makes my job a lot easier.
So if we were just to show up to visit someday, is that totally fine?
Yeah, so we're a state institution. So we are owned by the public. So we are open to all members of the public. We love to give tours. You know, we love to have people come hang out in post-virus times. You know, so we really enjoy engaging with sort of the populace. You know, the popular culture is nothing without the people that consume it.
That's awesome. It's on my bucket list for sure. And I'm going to ask you about your event that you were planning that got postponed in a little bit. So just keep that in mind. All right. Let's see. Another one for the group. So when do you know that a romance novel is kind of working for you as a reader? Like what kind of hits you in that like exact feels and sweet spot, for lack of a better term? Do you want to go first, Denise?
I don't know for me if there's one specific thing. If I can put it down in the first page or two and not read just one more page, I'm probably not real into the book. So I still will read it, but for me, I kind of fall in love with characters right in those couple opening pages, and I know I'm hooked when it's 3 hours later and it's 3 in the morning, as I tend to be up at 3 in the morning, and I can't put the book down. So, but I don't know if there's just one thing that kind of tips that scale for me.
That's a great answer. How about you, Allie?
For me, typically like that first bit of dialogue between the main love interests. If it's snappy, I love good banter. So when they start to get to talking to each other and they're playing off each other, if it really hooks me, like that's what really gets me.
All right. How about you, Olivia?
I would say that I'm similar to Denise. There's a lot of things that can hook me into a story. It can be humor. I do love banter and dialogue. It can be a turn of phrase that I find really interesting. It can be a situation that they're put into that's hard to put the book down because the plot is propulsive. And sometimes within the book, because usually within most modern romances, each individual scene is written within one point of view. I especially love it when an author is writing in one perspective, let's say a heroine's perspective, but through their writing, you can actually see what's going on with the other character, even if the person who, you know, the heroine herself does not realize what's happening, but you as the reader, because of the writer, can see what's happening, sort of that slippage between what the characters on the page know and what you as the reader can see, I find just deeply satisfying. Like reading through that point of view into what's happening for all the people on the page. I just love that.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Which is random, and I'm sorry.
No, I love that answer so much. How about you, Steve?
I don't know. I mean, it can be any number of things. You know, I think one of the things that I always come back to is this idea of sort of what I call warm blanket reads, where you start reading the book and it's like you've been enveloped and you're like just comfortable and cozy. I mean, even if it's like a suspense or a mystery or whatever, but like you feel like you're in good hands with the author. And that's really hard to quantify, but like that's kind of what I'm always looking for. Like, Alyssa Cole is the one I always come back to as someone who when I pick up her books, I'm in. Like, it doesn't even take 10 pages.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with her work is so exceptional. And it's just, like Denise said, you just sit down and it's like, oh, I've read most of this book and haven't blinked. Speaking of warm and comfortable, Olivia, you're kind of known for the term cinnamon roll. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, so around 2016, for reasons that can remain unexplored, I found myself with limited tolerance for heroes who were very blustery, or who did things that I thought were ill-intentioned, or who were unkind. And so what I started looking for in my reading was for especially heroes who were at their core like just good people, like good human beings who are trying their best and were well-intentioned. And that doesn't mean you can't have conflict within a plot. There are well-intentioned people who disagree with each other about a variety of things. There can be conflict inside and outside, but I just needed to know that the hero on the page was a fundamentally decent human being. And so the sort of term for these sort of sweet, well-intentioned heroes, the sort of cinnamon roll heroes sort of came up around that time. And I did not coin that term, but I did use it. And that's a lot of what I write, because I mean, that's the sort of love that I find gives you that feeling that Steve talked about. So the warm blanket feeling. If I have to wonder whether the hero is a decent person, then it's hard for me to get that warm blanket feeling.
Yes, absolutely. So this is going to lead perfectly into my first question. So I'm going to give you two options. You have to pick one. You can't pick both. And you can each just give me like a one-sentence reason why. And I'm going to share a poll with the audience where you can make your decision too. These aren't very kind. They're going to make you make a choice. So sorry, but it'll be fun.
Sorry.
So, okay, I'm not. I'm really not. we had a fun. I put one of them online yesterday, which I'll talk about in a minute. But here is your question, and we'll start with Denise, and then we'll go Denise, Steve, Allie, Olivia. Okay. So, friends to lovers, or enemies to lovers. And I'm sending the poll to the group too.
And do you want us to share before they vote or after?
Let's try to get all the votes in, and then you guys can share.
This is Jess. I just want to share that it's really fun to watch these results coming in real time. Like, which one is going to win?
What is very far ahead right now? You have any guesses, my panelists?
This is a really easy one for me.
Why don't you go ahead and choose yours, and then I'm gonna close this in just a second.
So hands down, no question, I am an enemies to lovers girl. I love those stories. I devour them like catnip. I'm working on one right now. All the way enemies to lovers.
Can you all see the results? So it was 42% for friends and 58% for enemies. Ooh. All right, Steve, go.
I would pick friends to lovers. I just sometimes the angst of an enemies to lovers can get to me, but again, in the right hands, it can be really good. But yeah, I'd rather it sort of start off friendly.
All right, Allie.
I'm with Steve. I'm a friends to lovers kind of girl. I like watching people slowly realize that friendship could be something more, and everybody on the outside just sitting there going, "You idiots, come on, get it together." I love that.
All right, Olivia.
In fan fiction, they call that, was it Two Idiots in Love?
Yes.
Which I love. I am also, despite the poll results, I am also a friends to lovers person, because I have limited tolerance in my reading for angst and especially for bitterness. And it's also hard because, and there are a lot of writers who do this really, really well, but they have to sort of balance on a precipice between, if they're going to be enemies, they have to do things that would make them enemies and express that, but not sort of falling over that precipice into becoming things that cannot be forgiven and unlikable. And I just find that stressful some of the time. So I do love friends to lovers. But there are a lot of amazing books, as Denise is, I am certain, that are enemies to lovers.
Absolutely. I can go either way, but I am definitely more an enemies to lovers person myself. I like, especially when it's enemies to lovers second chance, where they were friends or lovers first, something happened, and then we see why they get back together. And I think my particular favorite is Sarah McLean. She does a really great job doing that across the series, especially. She usually builds these wonderful worlds where you see that final couple just the whole time, and then how she brings them together. And I'm always like, yes. It works very well for me, although it's stressful because I worry every time, even though we all know it's going to be a happily ever after.
I think I might be a bad person. I never worry.
I'm just like,
but I will say I need there to be like, I really want them to really be enemies. If it's just like a misunderstanding, I'm not here for that. So I really like to clash. Maybe that says something about me. I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to bring in a counselor next time. Oh, all right. That was awesome. I like that game. Let's see. So, Allie, you spend some time analyzing romance tropes in your work, in popular media, with films, etc. Do you have some recent favorite movies that you've been watching that are kind of great examples of things that are full of romance tropes that you want to talk about?
Sure. Let's see. Well, we just finished Crash Landing on You, which we all know it has all the tropes. But more so in movies. I really like that Netflix is getting into producing all these romantic comedies, especially these young adult-based romantic comedies, which have these really nice looks at romance from young adult media. To All the Boys, we all love that one, and I think that one is really sweet and does nice sweet romance really well. Right now I'm really looking back at things from the past, though, with fresh adult eyes and not just nostalgia, and looking at the things that are done well, but the things that are imminently cringy for people now that we know better ideas about consent, and how that affects our views of those movies now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this leads really well into a question I was going to ask Denise. Denise, it wasn't this summer, it was this spring. The timing eludes me, but you were running your 2020 round class, the Moving Past Bodice Ripping toward Shredding the Patriarchy class. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you ran that both online, and I think you did it at your school too?
Yeah. So I work at a university, and with a girlfriend who reads a lot of romance, we were just chatting. She said, "Hey, you should teach one of our honors seminars on romance." And I said, "Yeah, that would be funny." And she's like, "No, do it. The proposal's due in 2 days." And so I made her do it with me, Emily. I don't know if she's on today. But it was just supposed to be this course for 14 of our students. Most of them were engineers and in agriculture and hadn't read romance before. And they take this 1 credit discussion course. And so we're teaching it, but it's really more about getting them to do reading and to talk about it and to discuss ideas. And so, as I am wont to do, I just mentioned that I was doing it on Twitter, and it kind of blew up. And so we offered it as kind of an online course, online discussion. And I expect maybe 50 people. I think about 600 people signed up. And so, you know, we emailed them content of what we talked about with the students, but then it was just really a chance for everybody to come together and talk about these ideas, and to bring all of their different knowledge around patriarchy and intersectional feminism and how that relates to what we were reading in romance. And so that was really exciting. Didn't finish up the semester as we started, obviously. But yeah, that was a really just cool way to get to know people and to just have some really, I think, really good conversations. And in class, it was a lot of fun to see students who'd never read romance, who came in on the first day saying, well, you know, those covers are just, and then leaving, you know, in April as these advocates of romance and recommending it to their friends and, you know, spreading the word. And so that was really cool to see with our students in person.
Yeah, I absolutely signed up for all that. I loved getting the syllabi in my email every week. That was super great. And you still have most of that up on your website, correct?
I do. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think it's still up on the website. It's still out there to share with folks.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was really great discussion, both just on Twitter, so that was wonderful. Olivia, you recently recorded a session that you had given previously to the Romance Writer Convention called Big Love, Fat Representation in Romance. So seeing this type of rep really means a lot to me and to so many readers. And can you talk about how you use that work in your own books and especially in your upcoming book, spoiler alerts? I don't have spoiler alert up, but I have 40 books up.
I actually, smart. She flipped up a copy of her book, and I have copies, and they are not next to me. So I may run eventually and go grab a copy. But
absolutely.
So your question is sort of my use of the word fat, or just talking about fat representation in general?
In general, I think would be great.
Okay. Well, you know, I grew up you see, this is love and romance. My husband just passed me. He heard me because I'm loud. He came in to pass me my book. So I grew up a fat kid from the time I was 6 or 7, and not like just a little chubby, and I grew up basically into a fat adult. And, you know, I've read romances the entire time from that time till now. And I sort of searched for myself, someone like me on the page from that time, as reassurance, because the world can be not always kind to fat kids or fat adults for that matter, as reassurance that I could have a happy ending, that I could find love and be found desirable and find happiness, you know, not despite my size, not because of my size, but just because I'm myself. And so I searched for that in my books when I was growing up, and there wasn't a lot there. And a lot of it's become more common, particularly with self-publishing. But even so, a lot of the representation I saw, I often found quite hurtful in ways that I don't think are deliberate, but perhaps still problematic in how fatness is represented on the page. And so, yes, in my own books, pretty much at this point, all of my female main characters and occasional male main characters are going to be fat, because I want to put that rep out there and hopefully do a good job so that if people are desperate for it and needed it the same way I needed it, that it's out there. And hopefully in a way that is not hurtful, in a way that hopefully helps people feel good about themselves, and also understand that you don't have to be thin to be loved.
Absolutely. Can I reach it? Yeah. So this moment happened online this year that was just so amazing. So this beautiful cover illustrated by Lenny Kaufman. Is that
Lenny Kaufman? Okay. Who's a goddess.
Yeah, so this
illustrated my spoiler alert too.
Yeah, so this came out, and then a Twitter friend of mine cosplayed Tess.
Emily.
Yes,
Emily
yes.
cosplayed
Emily
Tess.
cosplayed Tess, and it was like the most beautiful photograph I've seen. And it like that means so much to people to be able to do that, and it was really great and one of my favorite moments from this year. So
I cried. I mean, I
did
cried.
too.
Yeah.
So beautiful. This leads me back to Steve. I know you were planning with BGSU to do a romance kind of conference that I was desperate to go to, but was probably not going to be able to go to, but now it's been postponed. Could you just talk briefly about what you were hoping to do with that, and like the top couple of panels that you were most excited about that hopefully we can be able to see in the future from you?
Sure. So we had first done this in 2018, and it was a small conference. It was about 55 people. We brought together academics, authors, readers, all into the same room to like just dork out for a good day and a half. And Ms. Beverly Jenkins was our keynote speaker. It was fantastic. So we were planning on doing basically the same thing again this year, with Alyssa Cole as our main speaker. And one of the things I was really excited for this year, and it's making me sad just thinking about it, is actually how many panels were focused on history, about the genre, about Black authors within the genre, about sort of, disability rep in the genre, all of these things. So it wasn't just, as much as I love, the English professors, it wasn't just literary criticism. It was also really digging down into the roots of the genre, and I think that is really important, and it's a direction that academia needs to go with romance to really understand it well, in the same way we understand some of the other genres. So it was unfortunate that we had to cancel, but I've sort of let everyone know we're going to do it at some point, and hopefully we can get a lot of the same folks to come back and see us.
Yeah, I really hope so too, and whatever we can do to help with that in the future, absolutely, because it's so important, as you said.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really loved about the setup was bringing those three different groups together, because I realized, sort of being part of sort of Romancelandia and being in academia and all these other things, you realize people are saying the same stuff. They're just using different terminology and different ways of expressing it. So getting all those people in the same room, I think, does so much to sort of move the ball forward.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go to a general question for everybody again. Let's do, does anybody want to share like a fun library memory, like either a romance specific one or just like a funny or fun library story, or kind of why libraries are important to you, public or otherwise? I will start with Allie this time.
Ooh. So my neighborhood library growing up, they had a reading cave that was painted like one of the monsters from Where the Wild Things Are. And so it had like lots of pillows and stuff, and you could go up there and read in there. And like, I would say maybe until I was like a teenager, I would go read there. Even with romance novels, I didn't care because it was like one of the most comforting places in the world to go.
I love that so much. How about you, Olivia? I know you used to work in one.
I worked in a library for 5 years, actually, and I worked as a children's librarian for a while, and then as an adult reference librarian. So the gamut of that, in both a rural branch where you did everything, and then urban branch where I was very much just at the reference desk. I think what became clear to me is I've always loved libraries, but it's just how many purposes within the community libraries serve, at least in the community where I was working. And I think as much as I absolutely love books and think that libraries serve such a great role in exposing readers to new authors and new books. And I can't understand anyone who would sort of begrudge libraries as authors. I mean, it's wonderful because books are not necessarily in everyone's budget. And even if it is in your budget, if there's an author you don't know, do you want to spend untold amounts of money buying it when you could borrow it, see what you think, and then if you want to buy it later, you can buy it later. So it serves that role, but it's also for community organizations. It's for internet access for people who need that, who may not have it. To be blunt, in my community, it was a place where we had a large homeless community where they could go when it was cold outside or dangerously hot outside, where they could quietly go there and be on the internet or read a newspaper and be safe. It was a place where we had a makers thing where you could come in and sort of share your interests. I mean, libraries are crucial to the community in ways that I don't think most people understand. But librarians are not all librarians. There are different types of librarians. We talked with Robin Bradford has said before, I mean, there are problematic things in libraries, obviously, but libraries as a whole are fighting for their communities and serving their communities. And I believe in their mission just intensely. Sorry, you again, you didn't want to know all that, but it's...
Yeah, we do. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, I'm missing all of that doing what I'm doing right now. Like, I'm missing the people and being able to react to what's happening in the moment, and doing virtual programming is wonderful. And I'm glad, like, the situation, like, of all the things, like, the one good thing is getting to have all of you to do a program with me when I would never have been able to do that before. And that's wonderful, but we're missing our other work too. And hopefully everybody in library land are hanging in there and it'll be okay. Denise, what about you?
I was trying to narrow it down, but I think I'll share. Ms. Mabry was the librarian in my elementary school in Southern California. And I thought she was the coolest person and had the coolest job. Like, that could be a job. Added to that, she was a Black woman, and my third grade teacher was a Black woman, and I didn't have another instructor who looked like me until my master's program. And then that was it, all through my PhD. And so that was sort of that added level of, I think you're such a cool person because you help me find books and you get to work around books all day. And also, I kind of remember she wore cool sweaters, but that was a long time ago. And also, like, you're somebody who looks like me, who gets to do this thing and be in this space that I love. And that was so meaningful. And all these years later, I still think often about her and about my teacher at the time, who were so kind of impactful. She also helped us throw a surprise birthday party for the teacher, because I was that level of nerd that I organized a surprise party for my third grade teacher. That's a different story. We were not allowed to bring the cake and ice cream into the library.
Secret cake. What about you, Steve?
So, I mean, they pay my salary, so that's important. But so I have a similar story to Denise. Mrs. Campbell, who was the children's librarian in Mansfield, Massachusetts, and I went through all the books in the children's section, and she went to my parents and said, "Is it okay if he reads grown-up books?" And they said yes, and there was a negotiation. And so I got to read bigger kid books. She let me go up into the reference section. So it was an old Carnegie style library. So the children's section was in the basement, then the adult section, and then the reference section was on the second floor. And just the hours I spent in that reference section in middle school, I would have an idea and I would go look it up. And just having librarians who are so open to kids being curious and being able to, just let us run is, I think, so important for every kid, really.
Absolutely. Like, get that idea and just show them how you can dig down into it and find all these amazing things. Like, I love doing that. Kids get so excited. And then when you can walk right to the book without even looking it up and they think you're magic. You're like, yes, I absolutely am. I miss doing programming in my building because something wild would usually happen either during my program or while the program was going on and outside. And one of my favorite memories was I had a Galentine's Day or Palentine's Day like book buffet, and my best friend came. It was super sweet. She came to my program because we're best gals. And I've told her so many stories about things, and you know, people think you exaggerate a little bit. Like, no, I'm serious. And at the end of my program, this person came in with a duffel bag. He was all out of breath. He's like, did I miss the waffles? Because I have waffles for the people. I was like, oh no, there's still waffles. Please have a waffle. He's like, great. I saw it advertised at Central Library. I came took 2 buses to get here, and I brought my manuscripts that I wrote. And I was hoping everyone would look at my work while I eat the waffles. I'm just like,
waffles and critique.
I'm like, well, I'm talking about books that are already available, but let me send you to my manager who can get you some self-publishing ideas and tools. And it was delightful. I think about him all the time. Hope you're out there somewhere getting your work put out. Oh, so at least my toddler didn't bust in on us today, so that's also exciting.
I really love the idea of waffles and critique.
Yeah. We just had some Eggos and some whipped cream. It was a good time because we can have
Why have my critique partners not offered waffles?
Wow, I would be happy to offer any of you waffles. Beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and give you all another answer. You have to pick an answer question here. Let me pick pick one. Let's see. Ooh. Okay. So if you had to choose, you only get to pick one. Secret Baby or Insta-Love? I'm gonna launch my poll here for everybody, and you ponder your decisions.
I require no pondering.
If you want to go ahead, Denise. Go ahead.
Well, now I'm afraid that everybody's going to disagree with me again.
No, go for it.
Honestly, after you said Secret Baby, it really didn't matter to me what was next. I was going to pick that. Insta-Love is the thing I would pick first, but Secret Baby is like bottom of the list for me.
Ooh, it seems you're in agreement with most of the audience. We're still collecting some votes here.
It would not even have mattered to me if the other option was like Love Triangle, which is also toward the bottom. I still would pick it over Secret Baby.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna close this share.
That I like Secret Baby.
Whoa.
Wow.
Does anybody want to defend Secret Baby?
Okay.
I mean,
so I rise not to defend it. I'm not going to defend it, but it's led to some of the best covers that have ever existed in Romance Land. Just like the appearance of like a shirtless man holding a small infant on a romance novel cover, it just like beggars belief. So that, you know, Insta-Love is obviously preferable, but man, really good covers.
Love it. Allie, what were you gonna say?
So I'm not crazy about Secret Baby. Secret Baby can be done well, and I've read on occasion when it's been done well, but I actually like Insta-Love. It's not like an aversion to Secret Baby made me choose it, because I like Insta-Love when you get to see them like earn that, like, oh, we're so totally into each other. Like when you go through the course of the novel and you realize that, you know, this Insta-Love was actually worth it, and they grow together. That's why I like Insta-Love. It's not just I hate Secret Baby, which I'm not crazy about, but yeah.
A Secret Baby that I recently really enjoyed was Alexis Daria's You Had Me at Ola. So give it a try. She
I
does
didn't
really
know
good
there
work.
was a secret baby. Oh, wow.
Either.
I've heard it's amazing.
It's very
So
good, yes. I like it a lot. The audiobook is very good too if you prefer that medium. Let's do another. This one, I'm going to say a word that I hope my work doesn't get mad at me. Okay. Sickbed scene or danger bang.
what was the first one? Let's see. Oh, sickbed.
Sickbed scene or danger bang.
Is that a sick bed
Like they're tending their,
or just a sick bed?
like they're helping their person who is ill or hurt.
Right. So they're not actually having sex while someone is sick. It's just
That was my confusion.
Ooh, this one is very close.
Ooh.
Anybody want to jump in?
I just want to say that often my most joyful moment when I'm reading a romantic suspense, is when one of them has like a concussion and a gunshot wound, and they just go at it.
There was one I read where they had a concussion, but it was like towards the end they were getting better, and they literally went through the concussion protocol to check on them before they went for the banging.
That's so very smart. So danger bang did wing out, but barely. So that was a close one.
I recently read a very old Sandra Browne from like 1982 that the female main character gets violently ill with food poisoning. She wakes up the next morning and they have sex. I don't understand how that's possible. Like, I mean, we've all had food poisoning, and there's no way.
Like, no. Like, I'm good. So that's a danger bang. Any other thoughts? Or I will do another one because these are fun.
I will say I'm a sucker for a sick bed scene, not a sick bed intimate scene. There's one in my book, most of my books. So as long as like the people still kind of have their agency and it makes sense in the story, I am definitely a sucker for that. Let me take care of you moment in a book.
I think caretaking moments in books are completely powerful. I mean, they're usually my favorite parts. As much as I'm amused by the danger bang, I actually, the parts of books I often flip back to when I reread are caretaking scenes. They're my favorite.
Definitely.
I like them too, the caretaking. Like, I will, especially when the one is really competent and it's like, oh no, I'm gonna fix you and it's gonna be great. Okay, here is another one. Win over judgy parents or tell off the terrible parents.
Ooh.
I believe Jess came up with this one. Did it go?
I think I did come up with this, and now I'm thinking there's a better way that I could have worded it, because now it's really obvious what the right answer is, but that's okay.
I mean, I'm going with tell off terrible parents.
All right.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
I think if and when you read spoiler alert, you will see where I come down on this one.
Ooh.
Pretty strongly not winning them over. I'm a big fan of boundaries. So
Me too. All right, that's good enough. We'll just share. So that's pretty much how everybody was feeling. So tell them off. Anyone else? No. Okay. One of my favorite categories is by Tiffany Rise or Reese. I never know how to say her last name. Sorry, but it's a Thanksgiving holiday category, and she has her like kind of fake boyfriend over, and her family's being terrible, and she is like, "That's it, everybody get out," and he actually gets up and gets everybody out, and then he leaves too, and he's like, "I'm gonna give you some space," and I was like, "I'm like, now that's a hero." That's the one. Jess and I, that's why we're friends and coworkers. Oh, all right. Let's do one more and then we'll kind of see if there's any questions from the audience and wrap it up and see what you're all working on, and then we'll say goodbye. So one more. Let's see. Let's do. All right, we'll do vampires or shifters. I know we're all contemporary people here. I like to read contemporary. Which one do you choose?
I'm gonna go shifters.
All right, why, Allie?
All the wacky animals, I guess.
Do you have a favorite?
Why not? I don't know. Bears. Bears are fun.
Mm-hmm.
Your standard werewolf. That's always fun. Cats. Especially because when it's the big cats, they like have the cat-like behavior as a human.
Yeah. The Nalini Singh ones are really good when they're the Panthers. All right.
I really don't
else?
read much of either, but I think I'd go with shifters. My agent introduced me to Billionaire Bear Erotica, which I did not know existed, and the title she brought up was Berylionaire. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's a whole series. And so I was chatting with my brother-in-law about it, and he was so intrigued by this idea of Berylionaire that I bought him the series. And he's not a romance reader. I don't think he's a shifter erotica reader either. And so it was kind of a joke. I sent it to him. And he texted me and said, I started reading the books and I have questions. And I was like, we're going to have a book group with me and my brother-in-law talking about shifter erotica, and I'm here for it. And we have not. But my husband did not want to join us in that conversation. But I think, yeah, but the shifter romances that I have read, I have enjoyed, I think, more than the vampire piece.
You go, Olivia.
I mean, I love both. I read all sorts of romances. I think one author who I think is hilarious and does a great job with it, she writes as G.A. Aiken too. What's her name? It's I have it right here. What'd you say?
Shelley
Lawrenson. Yeah.
Yeah.
She does, my favorites are, she has these grumpy ass heroines. She has this honey badger heroine, and they are just cranky as heck, and I love it, and it's hilarious. So yeah, Shelley Lawrenson is awesome for shifter stuff. I mean, I like the vampires too. I like it all, but I think Shelley Lawrenson is a great way to sort of come into something that's going to make you laugh, that is a little bit different, and that allows the female main characters to be cranky, which is still pretty unusual, I think, in a lot of romances. So I kind of love that. I love a cranky heroine.
It's very relatable.
I've only read probably a few of either, but I would probably say vampires. I like the years under their belt and how that influences their personality and like talk about cranky. Like if you were 800 years old, you'd be pretty cranky too. Yeah, so that'd probably be where I land on that.
Yeah, I like the vampires too, I think. But I've been meaning to read Holly Trent, who's a self-pub author. She has like a Coyote Shifter series I've been meaning to read, so that's on my list. And I have to do PNR like very deliberately because the world building, if I try to do too much at once, I get really muddled. So it's on my list, Holly, I promise. All right. Jess, did any questions come in from the audience?
Yes, we have a lot of questions, so we're definitely not going to get to them all. So,
okay.
Sorry, everybody. But
okay.
I do want to say too that thank you to everybody who is using the hashtag on Twitter, because
yes, thank you.
like there's so much great stuff that people are talking about. So thank you guys so much. This is terrific.
I'm excited to read it later.
Roughly in the order that they came in, we'll see how many of the questions we can get to. We have a question asking about everybody's favorite type of cover, illustrated with the couple on it, just the hero or the heroine, old school with a step back, etc. Does anybody have a favorite type of cover?
I actually like illustrated ones. And I like them with the couple. And I know sometimes people think it's misleading about what the content is, but I like them because they can be fun and bright, and they're really pleasing to look at for me.
The thing about illustrated covers is, unless you are a big enough name that you can get a custom photo shoot for your book, if your characters are not very mainstream as far as being thin, white, abled, and male-female, typically, it's going to be extremely hard to find what you want in stock photo. And the thing about illustrated covers is you can get the equivalent, the illustrated equivalent of a custom photo shoot. It can look like your characters in a way that is hard to find often if you are not a person who can have a custom photo shoot.
I have an illustrated cover, so I'm with Berkley, and they have a lot of them. So I do lean that way, but I also think it's whatever kind of fits the book. And so I think and what fits the author, because there are definitely covers I've fallen in love with that are photo covers that are more clinched, and there are ones I've fallen in love with that, you know, some might criticize as not being romance enough and being illustrated. And so I think we judge a book by its cover because that's how our brains are built as humans. But I also think when we are sort of in the world of romance and we're reading a lot and we're writing or we're, you know, critiquing or compiling, that I think there's some things to see beyond that too.
Yeah, so this is complicated because as I said, right outside my office, there are 16,000 category romances from like the 1960s through the mid 2000s. So like the ones I find myself drawn towards as, you know, a guy who does library social media are the old school illustrated ones. So the really highly detailed Harlequin romance covers, you know, the weird montages of the early silhouettes and the Harlequin Presents. As a reader, I tend to go for like the Sarah McLean single woman in a big dress kind of cover. Like I really enjoy those covers, but I've enjoyed a bunch of the illustrated covers lately. You know, Olivia's covers are a great example. And also like the newest Harlequin Desires have been amazing photograph covers. So like, yeah, it really, I don't fall on one. Yeah.
I like them both in their place. That's all I'm going to say. Let's go to the next question.
All right. So this is not strictly in order, so I apologize, but I know we're coming up on 6 o'clock, and this seems like it might be a good one to end on. What is a book that you would like to recommend that has maybe kind of flown under the radar a little bit? If everybody wants to share a recommendation, please, so I can add them to my TBR.
Well, it is not quite on the radar yet because it's not released, but there's an author that you may have heard of. Her name is Denise Williams. She's awesome. And she has a book, How to Fail at Flirting, which is out later this year, that I was lucky enough to read ahead of time. And I highlighted so many like quippy sentences and things that made me laugh in the book. It's warm, it's witty. It's just really thoughtful and intelligent, and I just encourage people to read it. I'm so excited for it to come out and for everyone to see how brilliant and wonderful she is. So I could still say she's flying under the radar because it's her debut, So technically I answered your question.
I love it. Before anyone else goes, in the chat box, I'm going to drop the pre-order link for both Spoiler Alert and How to Fail at Flirting. It's for our local Milwaukee indie bookseller, Boswell Books, if you're so inclined.
We broke Beth.
Broke Beth.
Did Beth freeze?
What happened?
Oh, no. Okay, I have those links too, so I will post those links. Well, whoever would like to go next.
Well, I'd love to turn around and say Olivia's books, but they're certainly not under the radar because everybody loves them and raves, and I'm so excited to read. Spoiler alert.
I'm back.
All the books. I've reread Teach Me like 15 or 20 times. So if you haven't, go do that. But I would say, I don't know if it's flown under the radar, but it's been out for a little while. Perfect Distraction by Allison Ashley came out in February. And the heroine is an oncology pharmacist, which is, I think, something we don't see a lot. And the hero has cancer. And so that sounds like a dark way to start. It is, but it's also light and fun and really heartwarming and sweet. And so if you haven't read that yet, definitely check it out. It's a delightful, delightful read.
I guess I'll go. Blind Date with the Book Boyfriend by Lucy Eden.
She's
That's
great.
a fun one. They go on a date around Culver City, and it's just a nice, fun, light read.
So this isn't really under the radar, but Alyssa Cole's AI Who Loved Me is recently out in ebook, and I devoured it in like half an hour. Well, maybe not half an hour, but it felt like a half an hour. It was not the book I was expecting it to be, which I loved. But I know a lot of folks talked about the audiobook when it came out, but it's also now out in print and well worth checking out.
Am I back? Can you hear me and see me?
Yeah.
It's like, oh no. I am going to just quick plug one of my favorites that's collected now, the Uptown Collection from Ruby Lang. So there's actually 3 novellas in here. You can get them in ebook as well. I really love these a lot. They're set in New York City. My favorite features a divorced couple who are in their later 40s, I believe, and rent is too expensive, so they become roommates to help have a better apartment. And it was just really sweet and poignant, and I loved it so much, and it is really wonderful. Well, I guess it's 6 o'clock, so I think we're gonna quick wrap it up and say goodbye to everybody. I want to just thank everyone for attending today, especially my panelists. I appreciate all of your time. I know Olivia just finished a draft today, so that's super exciting. Thank you for being here. When you do leave the webinar today, participants, you will get asked to fill out a short survey. If you can, I would really appreciate it. We really thrive on your feedback, and it helps us plan things for the future. So please fill that out if you can, and make sure to pre-order your copies of How to Fail at Flirting, which comes out in December, and then Olivia's book, Spoiler Alert, which comes out in October.
October 6th.
Yep. Awesome.
I also, sorry, Beth, I don't want to, don't mean to interrupt. I just dropped the link for the ebook giveaway for How to Fail at Flirting in the chat. So make sure that you fill that out before you exit out of the webinar too. So.
Yep.
Can I add something quickly? On Goodreads, for Spoiler Alert, there's actually, Avon is giving away 100 print copies of Spoiler Alert. And that's, if you look under Spoiler Alert Olivia Dade on Goodreads, just scroll down and that's there. So it's something to point you to.
Excellent. Well, then, thank you again from here in Milwaukee. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your evening. Make sure to check out all the other amazing romance events that are going on this week. It is Romance Bookstore Week as well. I think Saturday especially, we're encouraging everyone to check that out. So please do. And then again, just check in with mpl.org if you want to find other programs that we're offering. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, friends. stop the recording. How do I do that? Anyway, I'm just going to end the webinar.